Today, our group will provide an analysis of value-based management practice, some evidence from the field. This is agenda for today. And the research area is the management accounting, and our purpose of this presentation is to provide answers for B to F through the analysis of this paper and expressing our opinion. Identifying and clarifying the research topic is the starting point of a research project. It will be given an overall and a specific idea of the paper, narrowing the research scope and be more targeted. From the title and the resource of the paper, it focused on management accounting, value-based management practice. As mentioned in the abstract, there is limited research-based evidence on how the concept of VBM and EVA are actually applied in practice in prior literature. Therefore, the research paper is applied research which is extended to provide findings of VBM practical relevance to the normative VBM literature and the concept of VBM in organizations. The research paradigm for this paper is functionalistic case study. Characteristics of this research occur with the characteristics of functionalism paradigm. The aim of this research is to find out how the concept of VBM is applied in practice. This aim not only describes features of the theory but also explores the application of the theory. It is not only description but also understanding. Questions are raised before the research. The researchers conclude theories from prior research. As for the application of the functionalism paradigm in this research, the paper first examined the normative literature in VBM and then examined organizations that have publicly announced their adoption of VBM by interviews. At last, the differences between the normative literature and the actual practice provided this paper with insights into how to study the benefits of VBM. It is important for each research paper to turn a research idea into a clearly defined research question. A research question will allow saying what the issue or problem is the paper goes to research, or what the paper seeks to find out, explain, and answer. Research question is based on the research objectives, conveying what the research is about. In this paper, the aim of the study is to find out how the concept of VBM is applied in practice. Therefore, the research question should be exploratory question, how the concept of value-based management is actually applied in practice. Many research papers were used as reference in this paper. Miller, Edner, and Lacker provided important reference for a paper. Therefore, it built a foundation for the VBM practice. Edner and Lacker suggest a framework of VBM built upon normative literature. The 6 basic steps, which will be mentioned later in the model section, were the main arguments in this paper since all practice examined through the interviews were compared to the framework. Therefore, the paper converted prior study framework into practice and suggested improvements. Compared interview results to the framework, it showed the success or failures of using VBM and how future researchers could help to study the benefits of VBM. In this research, 2 main theories are related. Value-based management is the management philosophy and approach that enables and supports maximum value creation in organizations, typically the maximization of shareholder value. The second one is economic value added, is an estimate of a firm's economic profit or the value created in excess of the required return of the company's shareholders. The only model used in this paper is the normative VBM literature framework. It is about 6 steps listed on the PowerPoint. Basically, it is choosing specific internal objectives, selecting strategies and designs, identifying specific performance variables, developing action plans, selecting performance measures, setting targets, evaluating the success of action plans, and finally with assessing the ongoing validity. For answering how data was acquired, to evaluate application of VBM in Finnish companies, 6 large Finnish companies from different industries were selected, and interview-based field studies were conducted. The CFOs of each company were interviewed, and in some organizations, the persons responsible for corporate development, the CEO, the business unit managers, were also interviewed. Interviews were semi-structured and lasted from 60 to 90 minutes long. All interviews were tape recorded and the relative written documents were collected. Now let's move on to talk about the findings of the paper. For objectives and strategies, shareholder value is emphasized in all 6 VBM companies, which is consistent with normative literature. VBM was adopted to foster 2 different strategic orientations. 2 companies focus on growth and the other 4 focus on the efficient use of assets. Growth could easily stop in companies that took ROI or ROC as performance measures, as managers did not want to ruin these high figures with new investments. In contrast, a positive EVA will lead them to invest. In terms of capital investments and working capital management, VBM was expected to direct more attention to more efficient use of capital. For performance measurement, although there appears to be a single objective of shareholder value creation in VBM companies, it is in practice adopted differently at different organizational levels and measured in various ways. In addition to EVA, other financial measures like ROI were also used by VBM adopters. Therefore, VBM does not seem to solve the problem. Neither does it lead to one common language throughout the organization, nor to decentralization or empowerment of local business unit managers, as has been suggested by EVA proponents. For target setting, EVA has not led in practice to a more objective target setting than the provided by any other financial measures. Targets are set based on various indicators, combining EVA with other financial and non-financial measures. In some other organizations, target setting is tied to the yearly budgeting process, whereas in others, it either occurs more often than once a year or is independent of the budgeting process. An inheritance effect seems to remain very influential in the target setting process. For incentives and the reward system, they measure the compensation combining with the EVA and other financial data, and these measures were used for rewards only to personnel at higher organizational levels. Therefore, the adoption of VBM did not appear to stimulate the payoff of shareholders in our cases, and thus did not necessarily lead to any improved alignment of shareholders and managers. There were strict upper limits in the rewards, and no banking system was present in our cases. Instead of bonus plans, BSC-based bonus were carefully considered to avoid short-termism in those bonus paid solely on the basis of financial performance. Strategic decisions: VBM directs investments towards a more profitable purpose, and it does not overrule strategic judgment. Acquisitions that look unprofitable were made to maintain market shares. Sometimes powerful customers require investments to be made to maintain quality standards of customers' business. Moreover, owners who had other stakes as producers and customers in the company were interested in looking after their own total interest. In such a case, VBM tools indicated actions that the owners did not perceive to be of value to them. With regard to the making of operational decisions, it appears that VBM companies have lower hunger for capital investments and become more concerned with the cost of working capital. It is reasonable to argue that VBM adoption may attribute to some changes in companies' performance. The conclusion can be discussed in 4 parts. Now let's talk about the types of VBM adoption. In this study, 3 types of applications are identified. The first one is the rhetorical use, the second one is divisional level use, and the third one is unit level use. For explaining the variety of VBM practice, if motives for adoption are different, we may assume different applications as well. Moreover, in the organization study here, all performance measures were maintained and VBM ideas were only partially applied in compensation schemes. The reluctance to throw out well-understood measures and compensation practice used for years could reflect healthy risk aversion. On the study of performance implication of VBM, observations suggest that in some organizations, compensation is tied to EVA only at higher levels, and lower management control practice are not changed by the adoption of VBM. Therefore, the use of VBM or EVA as a base for compensation does not necessarily mean that VBM is applied prudently or that it has any influence on financial performance of a firm. On the concept of VBM, a minimum requirement for a definition of VBM could be that the organization aims for shareholder value creation, and that either decisions are taken at some levels of an organization using EVA or VBM, or the management control system, performance measurement, target setting, and rewards is based on economic profit matrix or value drivers. Such minimal requirements would allow VBM to serve as a solution to different types of problems in practice. We think the results of the paper are significant. The significance of results of the paper can be analyzed in 2 ways. First of all, the interview findings for companies themselves were not quite significant, since each company faced a different situation for VBM use. Meanwhile, the findings were not particularly good news for those management accounting researchers who wished to use public available databases, since the information about differences in use was missing. For solving this, the study of VBM use and its benefits could be bound to have a laborious exercise to determine the problems and compare the research results. Secondly, the meaning of the results of the paper is significant. Through the analysis, it provides us thoughtful insights about how to study the benefits of VBM, particularly in Section 5 discussion. It raised many further research interests for readers to think of. For example, in practice, the paper findings show none of the firms follow exact advice in VBM literature. For further study, we could think of demonstrating whether there are organizations that comprehensively follow the advice in the VBM literature. If not, why wouldn't they? Moreover, the most significant point this paper brought to us is attitude that how different companies implement VBM in organizations. Under these circumstances, this posed an important problem in defining the VBM concepts. As stated in paper, when would it be justified to say that a company is applying VBM or EVA, and when would it not, despite claims by the company that such practice have been implemented? If a company claimed implementation without actually doing so, it was useless to study the benefits or failures of certain management technologies. After reading this paper, we have noticed that this type of questions did not catch lots of attention in current management accounting research. Therefore, these questions could be in mind when researchers are doing the management accounting research for VBM in the future. We think the conclusions are adequately supported by evidence. Through the analysis of interviews which were tape recorded and the written documents, it enabled researchers to make a comparison among firms and draw conclusions. Under Section 4 results, the paper provided clear interview results of firms first. It also provided a summary of overall findings to clarify the results, which we can see the term in sum very often in the paper. Moreover, the reason we think it is adequate because the interview results were well explained and clearly listed under the results section. It took about 6 pages to state the interview results of 6 firms and form a table of summary of VBM practice to make an overall sum up. We think this paper was written in a very well-organized way and it was very easy for readers to understand the content. At the beginning, it clearly stated its aims and how they would be approached. It separated the papers into 3 main parts: the normative VBM literature, the actual practice of VBM, and the discussion. For Part 1 VBM literature, 6 basic steps are listed for the ease of understanding of the framework of the normative literature. The best part is the summary, which provided the dimensions of VBM use and VBM solutions. This provided an overall sum up, and when we read through the analysis of actual practice, it matched with summary of VBM practice. It enabled us to make a comprehensive comparison to see the difference between literature and actual practice. For Part 2 actual practice, it was quite lengthy since it had to describe the findings in each company with analysis. However, it was written in a good structure which provided a description of the findings following by a summary and made conclusion based on that. Therefore, we would not feel lost when we read it. For the large part discussion, it was separated into several subsections. It suggested many further research directions based on the findings from practice. It used the keyword hence to link the section. So when we see the word hence, we could clearly know there was a section for further study. Moreover, the Appendix A illustration of VBM in 6 organizations was very helpful when we read through the paper. It provided a summary of the key features of companies' levels of adoptions, which allowed us to have a better understanding of each company's situation.